We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has gone.
G'day, and welcome to the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there's more than just one way to be a man. If this is your first time joining us, this is the show where men get to take their masks off, get away from media's magnifying glass, and have a real, open, honest conversation about the things that are challenging us, the ambitions that we have for our lives, and the change that we want to see in the world. This is not a place to create an echo chamber where we all agree with the same things and just create this kind of circle jerk environment where no progress is had, no tough conversations are created. This environment is where we dive headfirst into the tough topics so that you and I can have a better, well-rounded view of the world around us and how we as men can be a part of the change that we want to see. And so today we are going to be diving into a conversation with Clarity Coaching Institute's founder and leader, Kathryn Dixon, about the work of Byron Katie and how you and I can change the stories that we've created in our minds about the world around us. Now, there's a book by Byron Katie that I read a couple years ago called Loving What Is. And in this book, there are these questions, these very basic questions that allowed me to take some stories that had been really that I'd latched onto for, my whole life. And just by going through this simple questioning process, I was able to flip them around and change my whole reality, my whole view of that story. And so before this interview, a week before, in fact, Kathryn took me through one of her 2-hour sessions, and my goodness, I was standing in the fire. I was having to face things that I did not want to look at, but I knew I had to, right? So I was willing, but I wasn't wanting to dive into this stuff. And what came at the end was just phenomenal. The weight that lifted off my shoulders from this story that had been plaguing me for so long, the story that had kept me up at night, the story that had impacted and influenced my worldview of relationships, right, to myself and with others, I was able to finally reframe it and let it go. This isn't just your esoteric woo-woo kind of approach. This is simple questions that give you and me a chance to see the forest for the trees, to see ourselves as the hero in the story and no longer as the victim to the stories that plague us. And so I think you're going to really love Kathryn's approach to her work. She is remarkably just to the point, straight down the line kind of talker. She is got a beautiful, well-rounded soul, and she's very intentional about how she talks and how she shares information about the work that she does. So I think you're going to really enjoy the time with her because she's who I would judge to be one of the coaching practitioners out in the market that isn't full of fluff, that isn't trying to just sell the next whiz-bang course for you to sign on to. No, this woman has been in the trenches. She's done the work, and she is congruent with the work. She has integrated it into her life and her practice. And so I hope you can trust and have faith in that endorsement that she is one of the good ones. And so that's enough from me. Let's get to our interview with Kathryn Dixon. Enjoy. What's up, guys, gals, and non-binary pals out there on the world of Facebook? We are live for another recording of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove to you that there is more than just one way to be a man. Each week, we get a chance to interview different guests from various backgrounds in order to gain insights and tools into how we can essentially live our lives with a bit more clarity, a bit more of a firm grip on our mission in lives. And we get to do that with a whole slew of different characters. And I want to introduce you to someone who has played a pretty strong role in some of the abundance I've been receiving recently. We met a couple of years ago back in Salt Lake City at a workshop around some pretty powerful work, including 4 questions that can help unscramble and create some clarity when when I am experiencing stress. And I know this work has helped thousands of people around the world, and hopefully it can help you this evening. Kathryn Dixon, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I want you to take an opportunity just to introduce yourself and about your coaching, as well as kind of connecting some of the dots as what has led you to being able to do the work that you do with so much passion that you do it.
Okay. Well, I always knew that I was supposed to be happier than I was as I was wandering around on this planet. And I kept wondering why, why is it so hard to be happy? And I did all kinds of things. I spent 13 years in a spiritual community in California where we meditated. And I like to say I was great as long as I was on my Zafu. But as soon as I got up and opened my eyes and my mouth, all bets were off. And I'm like, I don't get this, And so I chased down spiritual teachers and I did all kinds of crazy stuff, trying to find a way. It just seemed like there had to be a way to access this joy and love I knew was inside of me, but I very rarely felt on on any sustainable basis. And so, I got into the Course in Miracles. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but no. Anyway, it was as close as anything I'd found for me, but it was very esoteric and kind of cerebral and, made you think too much. And it was, still following someone else's voices. So I had a meditation group that met at this yoga center and with friends. And it was a beautiful thing. We did it every Sunday. And there was a little poster one day about Byron Katie coming to town. And this was back in 1997. So she was not who she's become since then.
Right.
And I remember looking at the picture going, that looks good. But I was kind of, not another teacher. Thank you very much. Been there, done that.
Tell me about it.
T-shirts, right? Yeah.
You got the T-shirt.
I just, so I'm like, don't do it, Kathryn, don't do it. And a friend of mine who actually owned the yoga center, we had our Sunday meditation. And then I was getting ready to go. And Kathy said, well, you really ought to check this woman out. And I'm like, I've got things to do. And she's like, no, you really should. And so she was so uncharacteristically insistent that I thought, well, okay. And so I did. But, I was waiting for it to get set up. When we had our meditation group, we all sat in circles, right? This happened on the stage in the yoga center, and they brought in this grand chair. And I'm like, oh God, here we go again. And then, a couple minutes later, in walks Byron Katie. And I had never met anyone less pretentious in my life. She was just straight up there. And there was this beautiful young man that did the work. It was a small group. I'd say maybe 45 people. She was not well known. She used to come to Salt Lake a lot. We were lucky for a while. But this beautiful young man who did this piece of work that was gay. And in Utah and in the Mormon church, that's not a go. And he just loved his family and was just ripped in two. And he was literally in agony because he loved his church and his family, and he was who he was, and he couldn't find his way. And in 45 minutes, answering these questions, he went from agony to ecstasy. I mean, I was in tears. I'd never been so blown out of the water in my life. And it was just him finding his truth inside of himself. And I'm like, oh my God, sign me up. And so I spent the next, that was back in the day of the cassette tapes and VHS tapes and all that kind of stuff. And I just, listened to Byron Katie. We had cassette tapes, and I went to Barstow as often as I could, which is where she lived at the time, just getting as much of it as I could, because I just noticed when I asked myself these questions and answered them honestly, I was liberated every single time in every little snafu. And so it's just mind-blowing, the power that we have within us. And that's what these questions bring us to, It's not, no one has our answers. I don't have anyone's answers. And I've been a coach for 18 years, but I know that people have their own answers. And these questions help us to look the last place we tend to look, which is inside of ourselves. And that's where the truth, our truth, lies, because my truth and your truth aren't going to be exactly the same. Right? So I'm just on fire about this. So I did it kind of on the side and played with friends for a long time. And then in 2003, my life kind of exploded, and I will spare you the gory details of that. But, I heard inside of my head, well, now's the time to start your business. And I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think so. My life is a shambles at the moment. And so I did, because it was insistent, and I've been going ever since. That's it.
What a relief.
What a relief.
What a relief to hear you talk, because it's, it's like you said, when you went to this kind of meetup in Salt Lake, and there was the grand chair in the middle, and it's like, oh, here we go. Let's deify another guru.
Yeah.
Let's stroke the ego of another master. And to be taken by not Byron Katie saying, look what I did for this young man, by the message being, look what this young man did for himself.
Yes, exactly.
Like, that's
and
so
I get to see it all day long. It is. Sometimes people say, what do you do for a living, Kathryn? I'm like, well, I sit around and watch people wake up all day. That's really it. I can't wake them. They can only wake themselves, but I know what I bring as a coach is I know these questions, and I know I hold a space where I know they have a capacity that they might not be aware of. And that's helpful, but I'm only helpful for a little while as a coach, to kind of help people get their sea legs with the process, because we believe everything we think.
Again,
why would
so refreshing, because I've seen this so long in the coaching space that this codependence gets built up between coach and client, of like, the client goes, oh, I need this guru to keep me afoot, to keep me afloat so I can survive. And you've got this coach going, yes, you need me. I need the money. So, or I need you to stroke my ego. And so for you to be like, no, I'm just going to play a minor role. You are the hero of this greater narrative. It's up to you to figure this out. I'm just the guide at this stage of this phase.
Yeah.
Which is so cool to hear that. And again, very refreshing. Speaking of like, finding answers within self, I find it so easy that when I find myself in an existential challenge, to start looking outwards for external means to solve an internal problem. Yes. What out there can fix in here? And I'm reminded of a quote that I'm really going to paraphrase right now, is that we can't solve challenges on the same level that we create them. Mm-hmm. And so let's bring that to the head, because the head is a magnificent computer and tool, and of course helps us make a lot of decisions. But when let loose, this magnificent computer up here can start to scramble things. It can start to create these narratives, these stories that aren't necessarily reality out there, but in here, oh my gosh. The tigers, the lions, the bears, they're going to get me.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm curious of like, where do people start? Because it's so hard to see stress for what it is in the moment.
And we've been taught to manage stress and to resist stress. And, we've been taught so many non-working coping mechanisms, that most of us live in denial of the stress levels that we're in. Because why would you own it if there's no way to heal it? Right.
Or there's a pill for that.
Well, there's a pill for that, but we know how well that works over a long time. But, and whatever it takes for you, I'm not getting down on anything, but, I've just, So what's your question?
So where can people start with this process of like trying to be able to win the battle that's going on inside?
Okay. So the way you begin with the work is you look at a moment in time. So you want to get a specific moment in time, and then you look at your beliefs there. And Byron Katie has something that she calls the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. I think it should be called toxic waste dump for your head, but that's where you write out. So you go to the moment at the beach when, somebody said something wrong, or, a moment in time, and you write out your answers to these questions on this worksheet. It's things like, I'm frustrated with so-and-so because, and you name, what your experience was in that moment. Excuse me. And then it'll be, the second question is, I want them to, and you fill in the blank, so what did you really want that person to do in that moment, as opposed to what you experienced them doing, right? The third question is, they should or shouldn't. So that's where you give this person advice in your mind to make their life or your life better, right?
Sure.
Number 4 is, I need them to, and that's where you just, and these questions require some going inside and just like really checking out like what's true, because most of us don't even reflect on our experiences much, right?
Sure.
So what do I think I need from that person to feel better, or to feel safer, or whatever it is in the moment? And then number 5 on the worksheet is, what do you think of them in that moment? So you look at that person in that moment. It might be somebody that you really love. However, sometimes the people you love the most can drive you the battiest, right? Or actually beliefs about them. Yeah. And so it's in that moment. You want to freeze frame that moment, because we have 10 billion thoughts about everybody in our lives, But with the work, we go into the dark corners, the moment, and look and see what's really there. So number 5 is, how did you see them in that moment? And that's where you call them names. You just let it rip.
Like full judgment, like.
Yes, fearless. And the more honest you can be on the worksheet, the freer you'll get, because when we hold back, then we can't liberate what we're holding back, right? Makes sense?
Of course.
And then the last question is, I don't ever want, and then you fill in the blank. And then when we do a session, or when you work the work yourself, you walk through those statements one at a time. And the questions of the actual work are, number 1, so Fred's a jerk, let's say I was at the beach and he told me I should lose weight. That would be a jerky Fred. Okay.
Bad Fred.
Right? Bad Fred. So we're at the beach. Fred's a jerk, so the first question is it true? Well, and the work is a meditation. So it isn't just bam, bam, bam. It's like, open your mind. The open mind helps you to access the truth of who you are. A closed mind has very narrow aperture and very limited capacity. So, is it true that Fred's a jerk? Well, yeah, he told me to lose weight. He's a jerk. Okay, yes, it's true. Then the second question of the work is, can you absolutely know that it's true? And, and that requires a little going inside. Can I absolutely know that he's a jerk?
To me, that is, I love that question, because ever since I read Byron Katie's like Loving What Is, that second question determines for me just how willing am I to be stubborn on this.
Yeah.
Like to go, yeah, absolutely, Fred's a jerk. But to actually like in that moment, kind of see the forest for the trees, go to that bird's eye view of the situation as if I'm watching it like from a movie camera. Yeah. Of what was actually going on, 9 times out of 10, I disqualify the story at that question. Yeah, because we never question what we think we know. We think everything we think is true. Black and white. And very little of it actually is when we stop to take a look. And that's good, because most of what most of us think, and I can tell you for sure, I mean, even after all my meditation and guru hopping and all of that, I was still confused as all get out, right? Sure. And, so a lot of what I thought I knew everything. And then when Katie walked in and said, can you know that it's true? I was like, whoa. I mean, there was kind of a state of shock. I was like, wow, I don't have a freaking clue, Wow. And I've been walking around thinking I did. Anyway, so, is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? And it doesn't require that you get to a no. There's no agenda here. We're not looking for a truth. We're looking for your truth. The work is about self-realization. That's it. That's the ball game. So is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? And you can say, hell yes, on number 2, if you want. Doesn't matter. We still go on to question 3. And that question is, how do you react
when you believe that thought that Fred's a jerk? And this is hypothetical, so I'm not as invested in it, but, how do we react when we believe that stressful thought? And whenever I believe a stressful thought, I contract, right? I contract in my thinking, I contract physiologically, I contract in my awareness, my ability to communicate. One of the metaphors I like to use is it's kind of like, kinking a garden hose.
Wow.
Garden hose works great as long as you're not picking it up. And the minute you go, whoop, one side goes wonky and the other side goes dry. And it's the same in our lives. When I'm believing a stressful thought, I lose touch with reality. One of my favorite lines of Byron Katie's is, reality is kinder than our beliefs about it. That's a radical statement.
Reality is kinder than our beliefs about it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I can tell you in the beginning, when I started doing the work, there were times when I sat down to do the work and I'm like, damn it, Katie, that is not true. I'm sure it is not going to work this time. I'm going to call you, girl, and tell you what's up. This work is bunk. And whenever I would do it and answer honestly, it would shift. It has never failed me. And that I say wholeheartedly, like I've never found anything. I fail myself all the time, but these questions answered honestly will liberate you without question, So anyway, how do I react when I believe the thought? So that question, and the way I do the work is I invite you to look at how do you see the other? How do you treat the other? How do you see yourself? How do you treat yourself? So I go kind of in depth to how do I react? So you can really see the impact of believing a stressful thought, because we feel it, but we don't know what's going on. We don't understand where all these feelings and all my reactivity is coming from. So how do I react when I believe the thought? It's hell. It is. I feel alone. I feel judged, I feel whatever, so how do I react? Not good.
And what is that? Just quickly, in any scenario, if that's the reaction, what does life look like for someone if that's their reaction when they walk past a mirror or their reflection or they're out in public? If that's a common experience, then that's a lot of time of your life spent in that reactive state.
Most of us spend most of our lives in a reactive state. That's my experience. Maybe people know people that aren't, but, I talk to people that want to do the work. So I don't know, but, you can do the work on your body. If you have a story about your body, and believe me, I've done more than one of those, because everything is a relationship. So maybe it's Fred, but maybe your relationship is with your finances or your career or your body or your health or your whatever, and you can even do the work on people you've never met, people in Washington, D.C. That's hot right now. There's any kind of anything, because your experience of everything is your creation. No one else creates that for you. Yeah. You are the author and the artist of your life. We don't get to vote what happens. We get to vote how we relate to what happens, how we see it. And from a clear mind, life is a gift.
I love
without
how
fail.
It keeps coming back to responsibility. And
I spent a lot of my life blaming all kinds of people. It got me nowhere.
Absolutely.
And it was miserable. Yeah.
So
Even if they would agree with me, I was still miserable. Yeah.
So Fred's a jerk. He says this thing to you. You're reacting this way, tightening up, and so Fred's a jerk, right? Ended at that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then what?
End of story. Fred's a jerk, right?
Fred's a jerk. Yeah. I have all my evidence and I write it all out, And then the fourth question is, who would you be on that beach without the belief that Fred's a jerk? Just imagine, because everything is imagination. Like what I was imagining, the jerkiness was my imagination, So who would I be in that moment? Fred says, you ought to lose some weight, Kathryn. And I have no concept that he's a jerk. So I'm going to go in as though that's really true right now. What would be how would I react in that moment if I'm not believing Fred's a jerk? If it doesn't even occur to me that he's a jerk. And he's like, Kathryn, you should lose some weight. Well, I don't feel the reactivity without that thought. I feel more peaceful and calm. I notice I have the thought, I've had that thought too, Fred, and I don't attribute motive to him. I'm open. Maybe he really cares about me and, he thinks that would make me happier or something, or that would be better. Without the thought, Fred's a jerk, I just hear a man telling me his beliefs in the moment. And those are his beliefs. They don't have to be my beliefs. That's another thing we do, is we get all caught up in other people's interpretations and own them and stuff, and it's nuts. So without that thought, how do I see myself? At choice, free, chubby and adorable, I see myself with my friend Fred, who's believing his thoughts and sharing them with me, and I'm, not offended because he's just telling me his story. Why would I make that about me? Why would that be personal for me? So you just look at, how do I see myself? Without that thought, I see myself free to choose what my truth is. I see myself peaceful. I see myself unaffected by, his story about me. I'd rather be, conscious in my own story. Right?
Yeah.
And I see Fred as, being Fred and contributing in the way Fred knows how. I don't see him as, a jerk. I just see him a man believing his thoughts in the moment. I can go there. And then, so that's question 4. Who would I be? And we're kind of ripping through it, but the work is a meditation. It's an eyes open, life going on meditation. Who would I be without that thought? I mean, I feel free. I mean, just even playing, my shoulders go down,
Yeah.
I just feel more present and, unaffected.
Wow. Well, we in preparation for this interview, you were so kind enough to squeeze me into I know you're so busy, so I'm super grateful to do a session with me. And it was, I went into it. There's oftentimes when I get into kind of deep work, I love to kind of flex my deep work muscles, like, I've been in deep men's work for 5 years. I've been doing men's retreats all over the world. And so these narratives go through my head, and that can sometimes get in the way of me really just like at my core inviting whatever is alive in me to come through, because I want you, Kathryn Dixon, to like me and see how experienced I am. And so once you very quickly and effectively cut through all that BS, which was very impressive and something I deeply appreciated, man, were we able to go deep, because starting off the session that way, my head was just overcomplicating and trying to explain things and trying to justify things. And you just kept going back to these 4 questions. Don't deviate, no tangents, back to the questions, back to the questions. My brain was already making it harder than it needed to be, which essentially that's what brains do. It was a case in point. There you go.
Yeah.
And the work we did was so phenomenal, because after those 4 questions were asked, when we were able to flip it around and start asking myself those same questions, as if instead of asking Fred, I'm asking me, the fingers were just pointing straight back at me. And it was such an awesome opportunity to go, hey, there's a new area for work. What a new area of awareness for me to learn about. And I did my homework. I am journaling on it, and I've been connecting with it. And I've seen just how many areas of life, from the boardroom to the bedroom, those stories play to my emotions. They play to my reality. And I'm not ripping the pen out of its hands. I'm just simply saying, hey, I see you. Nice try. Nice try, brain. Like it's a dance. It's not a fight. So I want to thank you again for that, because it's had such a positive impact on my life over the past week.
Mm. Can I say something about that?
Please.
So our reactive mind, is really trying to help us. It really is. The part that wants me to look really good and have you be really impressed, or, whatever. I mean, it's got a million little routines. Yeah. It is really trying to help us find our way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the faculties, actually. Your heart is what you finally tapped into.
Yeah.
So the work kind of opens the mind, and then you access what really knows is the seat of transformation, which is your heart, which knows the answers, which knows what, it's the source of true self-realization.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mind is doing its best to help us, but it doesn't know how. I mean, it's all about, oh my God, there's a bus, there's a bus, there's a bus, don't step in the road. And so, we just listen to that, and it slowly but surely kind of tempers down this voice of the heart, because we get so defensive in our orientation, trying to survive on this crazy planet, but the work, it taps you into your heart. And I want to say one more thing too. Can I say one more thing? Am I talking too much?
No, of course you can't. No, go ahead.
So the other thing that you just brought up, I want them to see how much work I've done or be impressed by my whatever prowess. And Byron Katie calls it the 3 kinds of business. And it's such an important concept that even I, who do this work all day, would forget about it sometimes. And it's a game changer concept. And so one day I'm like, universe, I need a different way to say this so that I really get it. And I got in meditation a couple of days later, a download that said, call it the 3 realms of power. So I call Katie's 3 kinds of business the 3 realms of power. Okay.
Yeah.
And so let me just go through that really quickly. And I'll invite, anyone who's listening, to give this a possibility. Maybe it'll work for you, maybe it won't. But for me and many people I've met, this can change everything. So there's my realm of power. That's me, Kathryn Dixon, right? And my realm is how I see myself, how I see the world, which includes everyone and everything out there, and how I show up accordingly. So my perception informs my behavior. Yeah? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So my realm of power is how I see myself in the world and how I dance. Then everyone else has their version of my realm of power. There's 7.8 billion of us now, and that's a lot of realms of power on this planet, and so everyone has their perception of themselves, of me, and how they show up in the world. And then there's God or the universes or higher powers or whatever, kind of the orchestrating influence of life. That realm of power, which is kind of everything clearly outside of the, realm of humans. So one of the examples I'd like to use is the orbits of the planets that don't, run into each other very often. Yay, God, or whatever's up there, right?
Yeah, I like to call him Gus.
Gus,
God,
yeah.
God, universe, spirit.
Yeah. I like that.
Whichever it is.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's good. Yeah. So, there's, photosynthesis in our heart, so there are things we don't get to vote about, right?
Sure.
And in the concept of 3 kinds of business or 3 realms of power, the past and the future belong to Gus, not us, which is a game changer, right?
Yeah.
That's what Eckhart Tolle is all about, the present. That's
Absolutely.
the only place that's real. It's the only place that's real. But most of us spend our lives lamenting the past or worrying about the future, and we miss the whole ballgame. Okay, so 3 realms of power, mine, theirs, and Gus's, right? I like it. And then, so who cares whose realm of power is whose, right? What's the big deal, Kathryn? Well, and this is from Katie, but I'm coloring it with the realms of power, is the only time that we can suffer ever, and suffering looks like jealousy, fear, anger, whatever, any emotion that you don't want to be having, that can only happen when we're focused outside of our realm of power. Guess how often that is?
All the time.
All the time. Yeah. When I first heard Katie run the 3 kinds of business, I was like, whoa, I don't think I've ever been in my realm or in my business, you know?
I need to stop tracking my steps and start tracking the time I spend outside of my realm of power.
Well, don't even worry about that. Just come home, you know, because that's where the juice is. So why is it so painful when I focus outside of my realm of power? Because I abandon my true nature, right? So if I think the example I like to use all the time is if I think my neighbor should bring his garbage can in sooner than he does, I will suffer. I can put notes on his garbage can. I can call him. I can threaten him. I can bribe him. I can plead with him. I can do all these things. And people are here to do what they do. So I don't get to vote what other people do. I do get to vote about how I feel about it, you know, and I'm going to value my peace of mind more than how soon he moves his garbage can in. But the minute I care more about what someone else is thinking or saying or doing, I abandon myself, and that's what hurts, you know. And one thing about the realms of power is you can't really leave your realm of power. You are going to be in your created reality, you know, period. You'll be there, and so you might as well have fun and be conscious in it. Is that helpful?
Absolutely. Number one, is your neighbor's name Fred?
Nope. Nope.
God, Fred's a villain. But no, there's something really that resonates with me. I love Viktor Frankl. I love his work, and my interpretation of a lot of his work is, you know, to suffer is to choose to suffer.
Yes.
And to feel pain because of someone else's actions, it's not for what they've done. It's because I've chosen to interpret what they have done in their realm to impact my realm.
Yeah.
So if Fred tells me I need to lose weight, I'm the judge, jury, and executioner on what Fred just said.
Exactly.
And I love how simple this is, because I've spoken to people recently, like they want to tell me all about spiral dynamics, and I know it's cool stuff. I know it's interesting, but it loses me because of the complexity, what I judge to be complexity. If I may just not be seeing the pieces, but I just love 4 questions and then flip them around. 3 realms of power. Which one are you responsible for? And we can just leave it at that for now.
Yeah. And I invite, you know, anyone that this resonates with to just notice the next time you find yourself kind of winding up, notice, are you conscious in your own realm of power? Because when I'm home, I mean, life rocks. I'm in tune with my power and my goodness and my value. And I tend to project that out instead of all this other nonsense, right? Yeah. You know, so that's good. And the turnaround you've referenced a couple of times. We didn't do that with Fred. So let's wrap that part up. So after you do
Fred,
is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react when you believe that thought? Who would you be without it? And then the kind of cherry on top is what Byron Katie calls the turnaround. And you take the original statement and you turn it around in a variety of ways, kind of like origami paper that you can turn, you know, a monkey into a giraffe or whatever they do. So you play with the original statement, which you've just discovered isn't necessarily true after you do inquiry. Don't do turnarounds until you've done the inquiry, though, because the inquiry opens you up to a whole new world. You don't want to, a lot of people just, you know, want to do the reactive mind thing and just jump to turnarounds. Don't do that, because then you're just telling yourself more nonsense like you do already. But you take the original statement, Fred's a jerk. And so the first turnaround would be you take Fred out of it and you make it all about yourself, right? So the first turnaround would be, I am a jerk to me. There's no Fred. Whoa, how am I being a jerk to me when I believe Fred's a jerk? Well, it hurts. I'm in reaction. I'm not owning my value and my beauty that's unconditional. You know, I abandon myself and care more about what he's thinking than, you know, being at the beach, my favorite place, you know? So yeah, I was being a jerk to me. I abandoned myself. There's nothing jerkier than that. I went unconscious in my realm of power. It's never pretty, you know? So I can find that I was more of a jerk to me than Fred was. I have no idea what Fred was thinking, you know? And then, so I take the first one is all about me. So I was a jerk to me in that moment. And then the next turnaround would be, I was a jerk to Fred, right? And we're doing a hypothetical, but I can imagine that if I thought Fred was a jerk, I would get kind of aloof and kind of huffy and punish him for his wanton ways, right?
Yeah,
You
sure.
know, I was a jerk to Fred. I assumed the worst. I can imagine that. That's what the reactive mind is masterful at. You know, so I was a jerk to Fred. Can I find that? And it's like, oh, yeah. I mean, everything's a mirror. We live in a house of mirrors, right? And then the last turnaround would be Fred is not a jerk. And you just look, you know, you don't have to force feed these turnarounds. They're just inquiries. But, you know, sometimes I can't even find a turnaround in the moment. But 2 days later, I'll be driving down the road. I'm like, oh, there it is, you know, whoa. But, you know, you open to whatever. So Fred is not a jerk. Well, I invited him to the beach. I kind of liked him until he said that about me, you know. Fred is not a jerk. I've just seen him be so kind to other people, you know. So you just look for, you know, other truths, you know. Reality is kinder than our beliefs about it. So that's the work. It's really simple. It's deep work. My sessions, when you work with me, are 2 hours long. You know, because we go deep. We look really deeply. What is the impact of believing this thought? And then we go to who would you be without it? And, you know, and who I am without it is my true nature. You know, I am free and I am happy and I am, you know, all kinds of wonderful things, you know. And sometimes it's really cute. Sometimes in sessions, people will be like feeling their true nature and they're all jazzed up and then they'll be like, how do I hold on to this, Kathryn? And I'm like, you don't have to. It's inside of you. Just stay conscious in your realm of power. Question thoughts that hurt. If a thought hurts, that's a sign that it's out of alignment with your true nature. Our true nature is not mean or cruel or greedy. You know, we believe crazy stuff that makes us act out of alignment with our true nature.
Yeah. And our body.
And go ahead.
Sorry. Pain is just it's a warning signel. It's just saying, hey, what's up? You hit your finger and it hurts. It's your brain telling you like, yo, don't do that again. It might not end well for your finger. And so, I mean, I've had those moments of shame that have been, that has been the result of a story I've created in my head. I felt that pain, my gut's twisting as if someone's, driving their fingers into it. If only I had the insights in the moment, maybe I had to feel what I had to feel. I absolutely actually had to feel what I needed to feel. However, to not get stuck there, to not choose to stay there and to go, all right, shame. All right, cool. I got the message. I got the picture. I'm not going to hit my finger with the hammer and I'm not going to let you put your fingers in my guts. Let's look at this. Let's see what my body is trying to tell me.
Exactly.
And, emotions are so neat and they're so complex, but they're so simple. And yet these questions and the work you do, it's deep, but the questions are simple, but the work isn't easy. And
initially it's not so easy because we're so caught up in the convolutions of the mind initially, and we wouldn't be that way if we didn't know there was an option. People told us how to walk, people told us where to go to church, people told us all these things, and so we're just trying to be a good human, but we're completely out of touch. And so initially it seems complex, but the more you unravel, the easier it gets, because all of our stressful thoughts are kind of iterations of the same confusion, which is, I'm not enough.
That
nobody
core,
loves me.
Question, that core narrative, that belief we picked up when we were 3 or 4 or 5 from those who raise us. It all comes back to that underlying, I'm not worthy, or whatever that may be.
And we didn't pick it up as much from them. We made it up. They took away my peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm like, oh, I must not deserve it. I mean, it's all internal, the whole ball game. We make up the stories. It's just a riot and a half. And one of the things Byron Katie says that I love, that's really true, got it on my license plate: suffering is optional. You know, and it really is true.
Yeah. That's one thing I've been doing a lot of work on and reminding myself is removing the word suffer when I speak to my own experience. To say like, oh, I'm really, I've been really suffering with XYZ. And I look at like the word itself. Am I actually suffering under the thumb of sufferance, or am I just challenged by it right now? Is it the next thing to learn, the next thing to overcome? And just that language alone, I love that, is suffering is optional. Couldn't agree more.
Suffering is optional. And, people contact me initially when the spit hits the fan, usually, right?
Sure.
Otherwise they wouldn't be calling some weird old lady, right? And so, we tend to see these crises, what's going on the planet right now, what's going on in our bodies or what have you, as, challenges and difficulties and problems. And they're actually portals to higher ground, every single one of them. When you know how to question your thoughts, the crises, somebody told me, and I believe it's true, I don't know if it is or not, but the word for crisis in Chinese also means opportunity. And it really is.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, it really is. So when people call me and tell me, you wouldn't believe some of the things I've worked with. And, and when they go in and question their thoughts, they're free, And it doesn't matter how intense the circumstances are. We get to choose, And when we're clear, we choose freedom and we choose love and we choose the power that we are. When we're confused, we get funny. Not funny.
The question that's coming alive in me right now is, who would I be? What would the reality be that I create? And who would I be in that reality if it wasn't the stories that I told myself? And there's been these stories that through either working with you or working with the Mankind Project, things that I have held onto for so long, stubborn in letting go, because they were a full stop. They were a period. They were black and white. This happened because they're this way and I'm the victim. And when I was able to let my white knuckles let go of that story, finger at a time, and identify both the power it had on me and what it was serving in the moment, you're right, higher ground.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
That's what everything is for.
Well, Kathryn, you are way too much fun. I love the way that you deliver the message. I love the way that you teach. I love the way that you share. I am grateful for you for the work that you've done with me. And I just want to make it known, make it clear for how people can get in touch with you and work with you. So please let us and the audience know, while we've got everyone here live, how can we find out more about you? And we'll try and send some folks to your realm.
Sweet. Well, you'll send them to us, so we send them back to their realm. But yeah, so our website is claritycoachinginstitute.com. And what time? Do we have any time? Can I tell them about the gift ecology? Can I tell them about that really fast?
Take as much time as you want.
So one of the cool things that we do, I used to charge a fair bit for my sessions. I kind of went all over the place when I was starting. But I charged a lot because I was a single mother of a kid with a disability. And so I justified it that way. But I read this outrageously beautiful book called Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein. And I don't know if any of you guys know it, but he's amazing. And in this book, he said, why do we have prices on everything? And I was like, that's a damn good question. And then, does it deepen our connection with ourselves and one another and the planet, And when I looked pretty quickly, I noticed none of the above, money, and I'm not saying money is bad, but the way we play money is not, well, the way I've played money anyway, is not the best. I can't know how other people do it, but I read this and I was so moved that next weekend I took all the prices off our website. And so we offer the work in what we call the gift ecology. And so we invite people to have the experience and experience the value. And, there's incredible value in this work, but to experience their own value and then, assess that value in alignment with their own, resources in the moment. And so we've been doing that for 8 years.
Wow.
And it's been beautiful. I've learned a lot of things, and I'm, more abundant. I don't have, some big trust fund anywhere or anything like that, but I've just really changed my relationship to resource, and I'm more abundant in every way. And so we offer, our sessions in the gift ecology, and we just ask you to honestly, gift according to your experience of the value. And claritycoachinginstitute.com. What else? I also train people. So we're going to start a new mentorship, a 1-year-long mentorship, the end of April, I think, where people can integrate this into their practices of whatever. I've done that with quite a number of therapists, but a lot of other kinds of service provider type people or people that are coaches or what have you.
Yeah.
It's really fun. So, and I have other coaches that are really gifted. My schedule is pretty tight at the moment, but if you don't mind waiting, we can get you on there. Yeah. But it's my heart's delight to do this work. It just is. There's no question about it. And I thank Byron Katie. I also want to say thework.com is Byron Katie's website. And she's been such a gift.
Well, I can tell that just your heart pours into all of this. There's not a time that we've had a conversation that you weren't just speaking, not from your mouth, but your heart. And I know how passionate you are about this work. In fact, I actually met you through one of your coaches, as Linda Willis, as she was going through her training. And so I want to really encourage people that have interest in checking out the work. If it's not picking up a copy of Loving What Is by Byron Katie, it's reach out to claritycoachinginstitute.com to try and get on a schedule with one of the coaches, because it was just,
I do have one more thing that I always forget to mention. And we've got over 1,200 people on our meetup, but I'm the worst self-promoter because I don't really care about that. But on Tuesday, 2 Tuesdays a month, and tomorrow night I will be doing it. We have an open mind, open heart meetup that's just open to whoever. We can have up to 500 people there, but usually it's more like 10. And so you can experience the work there or just watch or what have you. So open mind, open heart meetup on Meetup. So that's another way, and that's that's just donation or whatever. Yeah. Fantastic. We do it for the joy of it. Yeah.
Good, as we should do most things.
It's a lot more fun, I can tell you that. Yeah.
Kathryn, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. And for those of you who have been watching us live throughout this live broadcast of the Mankind podcast, I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you for your giveaway. I want to thank you for your comments. And I want to thank you for turning up each week to continue to support. I feel like we as an organization with the Mankind Project, our mission for the longest time has been, change the world one man at a time. Well, with 7.8 billion of us in total in the world right now, half of those being males, we might not get the goals we want to hit with that approach. And so this is a new initiative, and we appreciate now for, a couple of weeks that you guys have been turning up to support. So thank you again for another episode of the Mankind podcast, where each and every week we break the molds of modern manhood to prove to you that there is more than just one way to be a man. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Love to all of you. Have a fantastic week, and we will see you next week. This has been the Mankind podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. I have been your host, Brandon Clift, and I personally want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. And of course, I want to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you make it a heck of a lot easier for us to let men out there in the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. Special thanks, of course, goes to my incredible team, Marketing and Communications Director Boyce and Hodson, Producer and editor of this episode, Michael Russo, who makes me sound so much more intelligent than I actually am, so of course, special kudos goes there. And if you've been enjoying the music throughout this episode and all of our episodes, check out Jim, Donovan, and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. Now, the fee for this episode is simple. If you found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, remember that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us, so long as we rip the pen out of fate's hand and become the author of our own story. So my friend, pick up the pen and we'll see you next week. Lots of love.